the cloud. Okay, George.
Great. This is the Finance Committee meeting of the Special Service Area 61 Hyde Park. Open to the public. We welcome our guests joining us today. And Greg, I jumped in to take this because I assume you do not have this in front of you.
I do not. Thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it.
Pursuant to the applicable law and our determination that attendance by remote means is necessary because an in-person meeting is not practical nor prudent due to the declared public health disaster caused by COVID-19. This meeting is being conducted by video conference. It is being recorded and will be available at downtownhydeparkchicago.com and on our YouTube channel. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I believe the first item on our agenda is our report from our Isaac, our finance person. So Rod, shall I turn it over to Isaac?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Alrighty.
All
Well,
yours,
good morning
Isaac.
to everyone. Good morning. Pray everybody is doing well on this sunny day in Chicago. As of February 28th, total cash is at 119 compared to 49,000 last year. Accounts receivable 221 compared to 294. Total assets 341 compared to 343 this time last year. Any questions with the total assets? All right, liabilities. Accounts payable 8,300 compared to 13,000. Deferred revenue 272. So I have because I haven't made that adjustment. Due to SSA61, so it's really 2 months of reimbursements that need to take place of 11,872 compared to 15,581. Total liabilities 292 compared to 301. Temporary restricted net assets 69,000 compared to 65,000. Net surplus is 21,000 compared to negative 23,000. And the reason that is because we have not received any 2023 tax deposits in 2023. So therefore, all of our expenses without revenue leads to a shortfall. So total liabilities and net assets at 341 compared to 343, 738. Any questions for liabilities and net assets? All right, budget versus actual. For the month, we had zero income. For the year, zero income as relates to 2023 tax deposits. Expenses, 600 for website, 900 for social media for the month. For the year, 1,200, 1,800. For the total for 1.0, 1,500 compared to 3,000 for the year. Total budget for the year is 14,924. No expenses recorded for 2.0 except for garbage removal, 2,700. And for the year is 5,524. 3.0 is no expenses. 4.0, no expenses. 5.0, no expenses. 6.0, management, your bookkeeping, your office rent, and equipment lease, and commissioners meeting. So total for the month, 1,053. For the year, 1,982. Coming down to your personnel, program manager, 4,894. Support, 417. Total 5,311. So for the whole month, total expenditures at 10,626. Because there's no revenue, we have a negative shortfall. For the year, 9,788. For manager support, 834. For the year, you had 10,622. Total expenditures for the year is 21,128. And because we have no revenue, we have a negative shortfall for the year. Any questions for budget versus actual as of February 28th?
Well, just a comment on your report in terms of the revenue. The reason for that, I believe those tax bills are due at the end of next month. Usually they're due earlier and then we get those disbursements sometime around March. But I think because of the issues with last year's tax disbursements, these disbursements, the due date, I believe, is April 30th. Don't quote me on that, but the taxes collected aren't yet due. So
Yeah,
usually
that's normal, Rod. It's normal maybe late February, but March, April are the dates when you start getting your current year tax. So all of this is normal. As relates to the timing of receiving your tax revenues.
Okay,
Yeah, so there's nothing unusual about this. This is normal. So to your point, it'll be March, April, and probably May. If you said they were late sending out the invoices, then you're probably looking at late March, April, and May.
I noted, well, I started roughly about a year ago, and I noted that this time last year, we had disbursements roughly in March. So it's more or less when that money comes in. We're fine because of some of the late disbursements. We're fine in terms of that. And you know, what you're saying is more from an accounting standpoint in the way it's represented on the books.
It is. It's both. We have not received any on what was you had because you had late collections last year, you cut off your spending last year. So you were heavy on your excuse me. Because you had late collections last year and you slowed down your spending, your cash is right here. You're strong.
And that will show up better in the budget tracker than it does in the finance report. Isaac, could you take a brief look at the detail for a second? I had two questions about the detail, both
Sure.
very minor. Scroll down to the category 6. I noticed there were 2 reimbursements for cell phones for February.
Yes. There were 2 because I submitted 2 that were they're actually a month apart. I just submitted 2 within a short time frame.
Got it. Just wanted to clarify.
Right. No, it's not a duplicate or a double.
So what I would do for remind purposes, date the dates. So if it was for January, put the date for January. If it's February, February. If
Okay.
it's March. So just date it. Then therefore everything comes in for the proper period. And that's a George, because we'll make sure it wasn't double counting.
Okay.
And this is just a curiosity question. Line 39. What is herb and alchemy?
That was actually a SSA meeting that I had with my fellow SSA program managers. We have a meeting every 2 or 3 times a week 2 or 3 times a year to kind of come together and exchange ideas. We just had this at a restaurant instead of virtually.
You're not getting into witchcraft. I was trying to figure out what alchemy had to do with.
It was too early in the morning for that. We just did the herbs that early.
Okay. Got it.
Hey, Rod.
Uh-huh.
So going forward, what I would do is just kind of spell it out a little bit more in detail. So
Okay.
those who are reading it, they'll be able to quickly interpret exactly what it was for.
Okay. All right. And this is more or less, it fell under meetings. So
Yeah, no,
I'll
it's fine.
detail that out a little more.
Yeah, just put the description. In the description, have your mind, just put the details. You should put quarterly meeting with other SSA managers to discuss blase. And then they can see the business purpose in there. And then there's no questioning because you clearly communicated why you were meeting.
Okay. And to answer George's point, running an SSA, there is a certain amount of witchcraft involved from time to time.
I know that.
Hey,
And
Roger,
probably herbs too.
Roger, you got a question?
Just a comment for the future, if you would freeze the top row of captions. As
Sure.
you scroll down, it's hard to identify what the columns are.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Will do.
I guess the top 6 rows. Or
Yep.
that row
Okay.
6. Thank you.
Great point, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Isaac? Thank you very much, Isaac. We appreciate it. We'll see you at next week's meeting, I assume. Next week's commissioners meeting next week, right?
Next week's commissioners meeting. On the
7
21st.
o'clock.
7 p.m.
It's an evening meeting.
Okay. Is that Zoom or live?
It is
Still
Zoom.
Okay. We will
Alright.
make sure we're there.
Thank you, Isaac.
All right, take it in.
We'll also welcome Susan Alito, who I see has joined our meeting. Hi, Susan. Hope you're doing well. Next item of business on our agenda is the budget tracker, and that's me. So let me see if I can share my screen. My report will be a little more optimistic because, sorry, here we go. Roger was asking earlier about what the point of the budget tracker is as opposed to the point of Isaac's financial report. And our official documentation is Isaac's report. It's not the budget tracker. The budget tracker that I gave full credit to Mike McGarry for coming up with this concept. I see Mike is with us. Is really meant to be a tool to help the commissioners keep track of where we are. And I also use it to just sort of double check Isaac's numbers. And I'm always very pleased. Every month they come out exactly the same. My monthly expenditures are 10,626. It's exactly the same as Isaac has. So that's what we always want to see, that our numbers are the same. The one thing that is a little different in my report than Isaac's is that I also track deposits currently as if they were current. And since January 1st, we have received $72,512.72 in late collections from 2022. So it doesn't show up as from our current collection, but it is nonetheless revenue for the SSA. It goes into our budget. So that starting the year with 92,000 in the bank and with an additional 72,000 year to date total, we've received 164,000. I was late getting the budget tracker out today. I did send it out about 11 o'clock this morning. So if you haven't seen it yet, hopefully it'll be sitting in your email and you can go back and check. And as both Isaac and Rod noted, our current levy total, we're still waiting for that. I got my property tax bill last week. So we know it will be a while before we actually see any income coming in for this year. Other than that, everything is still very slow. We don't have a lot of expenses at this point, but I think we're getting to the position where that will change and change significantly, since we do have in the back of all of our minds that whatever the ultimate amount of budget that we end up with needs to be spent by the end of the year, that there will be no carryover this year since we're reconstituting starting in next year. Are there any
George,
questions? Yes. Sorry, Greg.
given the last comment, are we spending enough right now? I think that's for Rod, that question.
Let me put it in this way. Spending enough right now, if you're looking for, we divide that number by 12 and spend it in equal amounts. No, we will spend that entire amount or very close to it by the end of the year. Some of that I will talk about in the next item point in the agenda.
Okay.
January and February have typically been the slowest months as far as spending money, and then it starts to go pretty quick once you start the flower baskets and banners and street cleaning and blah 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 blah. So it can go pretty quick.
Yep.
But
Totally.
it's a great
No,
question.
And this year, just to reiterate the importance, we cannot roll it over. So what we don't spend this year, I think we lose. I think
that's
Correct.
right. And I think I back up Greg exactly that this year I think we have an extra commitment to get the spending done. So I think between us, all the commissioners, we will see that we spend down that budget totally. We don't want to lose a penny if we can help it. Roger, you have your hand up. Technically, you're not supposed to talk, so we're being informal here. So go ahead.
That's why I raised my hand. So if I'm recognized, I guess that's permission to talk, right?
Well, technically, guests are not allowed to speak until either at the beginning of the meeting or at the end of the meeting. But since we're all a family here, go right ahead.
So could you take a moment to explain how late collections fit into the revenue picture? You said there were $70,000+ collected this year out of 2022 revenue. if that's counted as 2022 revenue, how can you spend it?
It's late collection. There's actually a category in our budget called late collections. And so because of the tax mess that occurred last year, in which there were no tax revenues in the second half of the year for any of the organizations, everyone was given permission to carry that over as a late collection and add it to their 2023 budget. So in addition to our set budget of 490,000, we have this additional late collection fees. We don't know how much it is, so we can't budget for it. We just have to sit back and watch as it comes in. And whatever it is, we have to incorporate it into our spending plan and make sure that it's spent at the end of the year.
So
But
why
late collection is a standard part of SSAs. Every year we have late collections. Usually it's very small. You'll see that we budgeted 1,500 for late collections because usually it's a very, very small amount. It's just because last year was so confused with the tax problems.
So if late collections are collected in 23 and to be spent in 23, on the formal financial statement, they aren't recorded as revenue. That seems puzzling.
Yeah, that was my question at our
Yeah.
last financial meeting.
Right.
They are shown up, but they're shown up in other categories.
Right, Roger, some of this goes back to the witchcraft joke that George and I were passing back and forth
Okay.
earlier.
Okay.
Overall, what happens is we request a budget number, say the 296,000, we request that. And that's what everyone is, it's split up, and that's the levy of everyone's individual tax numbers. Not everyone pays their taxes, or they don't pay them on time, or don't pay them in a year. So that's where really the late collections come. And then when we get that money, it comes in kind of a lump sum, and then the commissioners decide to put it in one of the authorized categories, which is why you see where George has it partitioned out. We've had meetings to say, okay, late collection goes in category 1 or category 4. That corresponds to what Isaac was talking about, the certain categories. So that's more or less an overall explanation of late collection. Last year was a special year because the taxes went out late. So all of that money that we're getting from the late taxes, the city advised us to put it into late collection. Now, because that money came so late, there were certain services that we couldn't spend it on, but we still have it in late collections to spend it on something. And the city gave us instruction on how to account for that. Mainly, all of the bills that we could pay before 3/1 went under 22 in terms of the financial statements. Everything else goes forward under 23. So that's kind of the overall explanation. And what we're doing now is getting in kind of the details on the money that we're getting and how to spend it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other additional questions about the budget tracker? If anyone sees any revisions, please let me know before the commissioners meeting next week. All right. The next item of business is vendor contract extensions. So Rod?
Okay. I passed to the finance committee and will later pass to the full commissioners the contract extensions for services we already provide. That's the power washing, litter abatement, our streetscaping with Clarence Davids. For the record, list out those the numbers for those. For the power washing, we've asked them to extend our current contract. That number is going to come out to $21,300. For our litter abatement, a clean slate, that number is going to come out to $26,650. We have 2 contracts. They've separated out with Clarence Davids. One is for the actual flowers that go into the baskets. The baskets have been emptied of the holiday seasonal set of things that they had in there now. They just emptied those out, I believe, either early this week or late last week. So they will replace that with new flowers. That's coming out to about $23,850. And then there is the maintenance of watering them, which comes out to about $11,800. That's a total of $82,600. I will present the full contracts again. The finance committee, you're seeing those. I will present that to the full commission because you all have to approve those expenditures. And then those contracts will take effect April 1, some of them. I'm glad that the Moys are on. Like me, they live in the neighborhood. They walk up and down. They see the grease that's still on the street. So that contract from Advanced Pro Clean is in effect, and we'll start those washings fairly soon, somewhere around late spring. But those are the four current contract extensions that I'll ask for approval on next year. And George and Greg and you all brought up the sunsetting. I asked that those contracts, they usually go from April to March of the next year. I asked all of those contracts to go through 12/31 of this year because we have to spend the money. We can't go past 12/31 and say, have them spend the money, let's say, for something in January. So that's probably less than what we would do 4 years contract. But it fits within the parameters that we're giving that we're having a sunsetting SSA. So are there any questions regarding the contract extensions? George?
Did we not discuss at the program committee meeting last time that it would be good if we could arrange an extra cleaning for the viaducts?
We did
Not
discuss
all the
that.
sidewalks, but just the viaducts.
Right, we did discuss that. I do have a proposal for that. And what we have to do is time that because we've got the regular cleanings that are going to happen in the late spring and in, I believe, mid-fall. So part of that extra cleaning, if we think that there's an extra cleaning that needs to happen either before or after that time period, or if it's connected with a project, then it would be appropriate. But I do have that number or those, I have those numbers, but I also have that proposal, that RFP.
Let's file away just a middle note to check the status of the viaducts around a week or so before the 4th of July, because the 4th of July parade goes through both viaducts, and that's the one time where there will be a lot of people seeing, using, and in the viaducts. And it might make sense to do the extra cleaning just before the parade, so the viaducts are looking better than usual.
Okay, that will come roughly several weeks before the first one.
What if we move up the first one?
Or move it back or move it up?
Move it up.
Make it sooner.
Okay, how soon are we talking?
Now, they look awful. I was walking through the 55th Street Viaduct last weekend and it was disgusting.
Okay, I can ask the vendor to move it up. And then we just ask him to do that third cleaning or that middle cleaning.
Well, we can play that one by ear. If it wears well throughout the summer, then I guess we won't need that third cleaning, but we have the money to do it if we need to.
Okay. If we just have them move it up, that's okay. I'll just have them move it up and see if those dates are fine. Hopefully they'll start their season earlier because they usually started in the summer, but I'll give them a call and have them move it up. Okay. Any other questions about the contracts? Okay, George?
All right, then the next item of business is preparing for the 2024 SSA budget. So back to Rod.
Okay. Yeah, I want to start that process in the next couple of weeks. Our preliminary budget is due in the beginning of June. Our final budget is due in the middle of July. Now, this is strange, but these are the kind of policies of what happens when one SSA ends and another one begins. We still have to budget for next year's SSA, not knowing that the SSA is going to be renewed. I think we all have confidence that it may be, but we still have to go through that budgeting process because the budget and the work plan, the projects, really that all gets approved by the city council during the October, November timeframe of city budgeting. So our SSA budgets are a part of the larger city budget. So we have to go through that process with the city. Now, it's a good time to start it early because then we can have in mind the kind of projects that we would want to do next year. While I'm talking to the vendors and our contractors, we get a better idea on the pricing. What happens is pricing goes up. We base stuff off of last year's numbers. And all of a sudden I'm looking and talking to George and Greg and saying, we're going to go about 106% over budget because we didn't budget those increases. The other thing is, as we're talking in the program committee, we can talk about the projects we want to do this year. We've got a lot on our plate for this year, but for next year, we can start to introduce that and then have a work plan that we turn in that's a lot more sensible, not just in terms of the money and the projects, but also the goals. And we'll have a handle on that if we start that next month.
Rod, will our budget our tentative budget for 2024 be based using the current footprint?
Yes, because yes, that's the simple answer. Yes.
We'll know the footprint like April 11. We won't know whether we get reconstituted or not, but I think around then the commission has to vote on the footprint. Yes?
Well, whatever the final footprint will be, that's also going to determine the budget.
No, I understand that. I was just saying the footprint will be determined in April. Because,
I'm presuming so. I'm presuming so. Without getting really into
right,
reconstitution,
I mean, there's no
I'm going to
guarantee.
make that,
That's right.
right. I'm going to make that presumption.
So we should have some time to know that answer, George, like when we start budgeting in June.
Good, thanks.
Well,
Confused. So I'm confused. So let me just ask. So the 2024 budget is based off of the proposed footprint for reconstitution, or is it based off the current footprint?
No, the proposed, it would have to be the proposed, would it not?
Because they
I would-
want us to still do the same paperwork, whether we reconstitute or not, we still have to submit all of the forms we normally would submit. So I think that's a question we'll have to check into, unless you know for sure, Rod.
I don't know for sure, but it's also one of the quirks of reconstitution. Even though we have to determine that budget for next year, I mean, it's almost like a departing alderman or, or really any departing official. You're determining a budget for the next group of people. I'm assuming that most of you all will want to be commissioners next year, but it's just with that hard stop, there's no legacy carryover. Your commission terms end at the end of the month or at the end of the year. But the budget is the one carryover that we'll be determining throughout reconstitution. One of the ways we can clarify this is we're having a reconstitution meeting in a couple of days, and many of you all are on that committee. And the city will also be at that meeting. So this is a good time to ask the city questions about this process. And then it also carries over because many of you all are also commissioners. It becomes current business that you can discuss.
Well, in June, I would think the city is only going to know about the current footprint because the new footprint wouldn't be approved until December if I'm looking at our timeline correctly. So I would say the city will probably say it's based on the existing footprint.
Good. Are
I
there
would
any-
agree with
addition-
that, but let's find out for sure. So Rod, make a note.
Right, well, these are
Because I
questions.
feel like in conversations we've had, they were like, even though we're reconstituting, we still have to go through the whole budget process the same that the city expects. And I would assume they would give us the EAV from that, like the previous year, as always. So it might be based off of existing.
Yeah, that does make sense to me. I was thinking of sort of like a working budget versus the letter of the law,
Yeah.
But- right? It would
No,
have
I
to
think
be-
that they're gonna have us do a budget based off the EAV similar
Sure.
to here.
Yeah,
and
but
what
budget's
existing
doing-
is, and then we would have to probably modify
Yeah.
with the reconstitution or something. I know there's steps in place for that. I
Right.
just don't know what they are.
Right, we'll have the city in a couple of days. And it would be prudent to clarify it with the city, because we'll have them on, and all the commissioners. All of the committee members, some of you all as commissioners will be there. So I would say prepare for these questions for that meeting. And we'll have our representative, we get Mark Roshan, who is over the program. Okay. Any other questions about budget preparation? George?
All right, then that leads us to the final item on the agenda, which is questions and comments. Anyone have any questions or comments they would like to raise? I had one question just for my own information, and that is, when do we start paying the reconstitution consultants, Tesca? When will that start showing up on our expenses?
They will bill us monthly, so I'm assuming they've already started some work. We should be getting an invoice in April.
Good, so we'll see that shortly.
Correct.
Roger?
Just check property tax first installments due April 3rd.
And we usually start getting deposits 2 to 4 weeks after that, they trickle in. But they will come.
They put us on the expedited schedule that they did last year. We've started getting those deposits within weeks or less. I mean, it was fairly quick period after the year ended.
Yeah, don't hold your breath this time.
Well, my last comment on this is it's nice to be running a funded SSA. Last year was just a different animal. It's really nice to be running a funded SSA. It's especially nice, especially with this meeting and the program committee meeting. Members of the public, the ideas that you come up with either in these meetings or stopping us on the street or emailing, however you get information has really been valuable in terms of the process. And it makes running an SSA enjoyable. And I have one more comment. There is a phone number, 773-947-9541. If you could identify yourself.
Gary Osborne.
Hey, Gary.
Okay, Gary, how are you? Okay. George?
Then I believe that concludes our business for the day. The next meeting of the SSA Commission will be Tuesday night at 7 o'clock in the evening meeting. Same Zoom as always. And if there are no additional questions, then we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you. Thanks for stepping in, George.
Thanks, George. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.